The last line of Canto 4 is, I came to a place there is nothing to give light. So that line is to signify that where they're going is where the true darkness really is. So that brings us right up to Canto 5. Let's see, we start out, Dante leads us directly out of limbo and into a sort of antechamber of the Circle of Lust. On the way to this antechamber, we actually have our poets come down and they descend. And it says that the walls kind of close in on them as they come down. So at limbo, you're at the top of this circular feature. Like it's like you can walk around it, and then you can also look down the side. So you've got this circular feature, and then they step down, and it gets a little bit tighter on them. So here you have the funnel shape being clearly shown to the reader here. We will continue on. They will actually come down. Place gets a little tighter, and the first person they come up to is Minos. Minos is the king of Crete. He's involved in a lot of that Cretan mythology. He's a son of Zeus, and in the Aeneid, he is judge of the underworld. There's a long line of people lined up to him. He's this sort of demon creature. He stands in judgment of everybody. It's important that everybody lines up. They come to Minos and they confess their crimes, or they confess their sins, and at that point he will wrap his tail around himself, probably downward, I would imagine. So starting from the top, and then it wraps down. It's serpentine tail, and however many wraps determines how far you will go down. And again, that will I don't know the word for it here, make an allusion to the funnel shape, because the tail, it gets skinnier as it goes down, so there's less room at the bottom. There's also more people, so things get tighter as you go down. It gets more crowded, less space, more people. Virgil just tells Dante that we don't really have to worry about Minos, and they start to go past him, and of course Minos calls them out, and he's like, hey, who are you guys? What are you doing here? And he notices that Dante is real, like he's a person. But before he has any chance to say anything, in like protest of their passing, Virgil stands up and he shuts him down. And he does this very similar in the first two times, where we had that line where what is willed can be done. He does that sort of same thing, but he doesn't use that line. What he does is he actually invokes the name of Saint Michael the Archangel. He'll say something to the effect of, who are you to stand in the way? The one who sent Michael has also sent him on this journey. So, that's about enough for Minos, but he does give some parting words, which are pretty interesting. One of them I found to be particularly interesting was line 16, where he calls hell, in this translation, the Durling and Martinez, a hospice. In other translations, it'll be something like house of suffering or house of woe. It's basically trying to say that this house that they're in is a place that is like a caregiving place. But also the word is originally in, what is it, in Doloroso Ospizo. I don't speak Italian, but Doloroso Ospizo. I looked up the word, and it is to mean something like an inn or a hospice, but also in the medieval times, it had a connotation of, it could be something like an asylum or a place of confinement where you're not allowed out. The notes in the Durling and Martinez just simply say that Minos is being sarcastic here. And it seems to be that most people are saying that he's just kind of using wordplay, like you're here in this humble abode, but it's really hell. But I think it may be more of a contemporary critique of hospice and caregivers, as it's pretty well known. The further you go back in time, the crazier hospitals get and more scary, and we're talking medieval times here. So, it's not crazy to think that going to the hospital would probably be the worst thing to happen to you. Another line that I find interesting from Minos is line 20, where he'll refer to their passage as a spacious entrance. Uh, it refers to Matthew 7:13. Enter ye at the straight gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in therest. So, what he's saying is that it's easy to get into hell, and you should be careful while you're here. He also tells Dante not to trust Virgil, and, Dante's like, okay, whatever. So they pretty much just move past him. And at this point, there's a line at 25 to 26. Now the grief-stricken notes begin to make themselves heard. That's to say that this particular circle has a soundtrack of the howls and wails of the people that occupy this place. This circle is characterized by a violent storm that eternally whirls the souls who gave in to lust. So this is our lust circle. Most people are pretty familiar with lust. It's seen as the least of the 7 deadly sins, the most forgivable. The first thing we do is we come to some of our superstars here, and there's a whole big line of them. These are shades who subjected their reason to lust, and each one of them has a historical or mythological significance to their crime of lust. So the first one we come to is Dido. She is famous for her love affair with Aeneas, leading her to suicide. And that's super interesting because she is not on the 7th circle, which is where suicide people are contained at. Why she is here instead of there, I don't really know. People have said that maybe her crime of suicide was because of her lust. So the crime wasn't really suicide. It was all that she was caught up in the lust. And if she wasn't so lustful, she never would have had any thoughts of suicide. But so she's kind of in the wrong place. And that's interesting and has sparked a lot of discussion. So that's a good note for this particular canto is Dido's placement. Next, we come to Cleopatra, who is the last pharaoh of Egypt and famous for her relationship with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. Helen, big problem. Also, her lover Paris is here, and they're responsible for the fall of Troy and all of that. Achilles is here. He is a Greek hero, of course, punished here for his love affairs, which distracted him from his heroic duties. And finally, we have Tristan. I'm not real familiar with him, but he is a medieval romantic. He's a tragic figure whose love for Isolda led him to betrayal and death. I looked up that god, Isolda. I can't remember anything about it, though, at this very moment. So, you can look into Tristan if you like. He's kind of a standoffish one. He's the most, I would say, recent to the time. He's medieval, so everybody else here is pretty ancient. Let's see. Oh, the next thing Dante comes to, his heart gets hurt here. He deals with adultery, and this is him and Virgil come to a point where there's just kind of all these souls, and they're just kind of wailing around. And he's really set back by it because he's starting to notice a lot of knights and noble ladies and gentleman types, and it's kind of sad for him to see these people who have committed adultery, and it really, really, really hurts him. And it seems a bit silly to me because he's a Florentine troubadour. He should be completely familiar with things like adultery. It's his bread and butter. It's his art form. Not committing adultery, but, love. There's a lot of adultery, unfortunately, when it comes to love. But still, he really laments for these adulterers. He also feels kind of bad for them, which is a bit um, coming out of fashion with medieval style there. Uh, Nobody is named up until we get to Francisca de Rimini. She is a contemporary of Dante, and his story deeply affected him in his life. And I have sort of a theory here, and it is basically I don't think Francesca and Paulo, her lover, are really all that important. And I think the reason why they're here is because at the climax of her story, she is telling about how they were reading tales of Lancelot and Guinevere, and that at the point where they kiss and go against their loyalties and do what lovers or estranged, or not estranged, what's the word, secret lovers do. They kiss in a moment of triumph, and they also kiss Francisca and Paulo at the point in the whatever edition of Lancelot they were reading. They kiss in the story, then they kiss in real life, and then her husband barges in and kills them both. And apparently that's a real story. It was spread. It was a big scandal, real big scandal at the time. But still, I don't think Dante really cared to call too much attention to that scandal and make it live in infamy forever. I think it was more about bringing Lancelot and Guinevere into the story, because as we know that things like the Greek Roman traditions and the biblical accounts are all canon for this story, but things like just straight up fiction of the time would not be allowed in this framework. You can't just have Lancelot in hell, because then it becomes too fairy tale-ish. But by using Francisca and Paulo as a vehicle, he's able to bring them into the story. And I couldn't find anything explicit about that online, so I think that's kind of an original idea. I'm not real sure. There may have been other people who came up with that idea before me. But it just kind of stands out that he makes such a big deal about Guinevere and Lancelot and Francisca and Paulo, and how literature can lead you to sin. And it's almost like a warning, like it's like, don't get obsessed with your literature. So, it might be a lesson to ourselves here. Let's not get too obsessed with Dante. But anyways, yeah. So he's going through this story. She tells him about how she's murdered by her husband and her lover as well, and the connection to the Arthurian story. And he just passes out. Dante can't take it anymore. This is just too much for him, listening about these lovers who were gone astray through literature, like the power of the literature causing them to, or leading them to adultery. Just he can't handle it. So he literally swoons out and passes out. So that's it for Canto 5 as far as the narrative goes. But let's see here. I got some more stuff. Oh yeah, the passion and betrayal can be seen as a metaphor for the chaotic love affairs and political betrayals that were going on in Florence, 1300. People were kind of a mess. As we spoke about in the last video, Florence is kind of budding right now. It's got a lot more art influence. It's got a lot more money. So yeah, people are going a little bit mad. Let's see here. I think that covers it for Canto number 5. So Canto number 6. Dante's passed out at this point. We start with Dante waking up in the third circle already, where the gluttonous are punished. This circle is an endless, putrid swamp of foul rain and just detritus of all types, symbolizing waste and gluttony. And the first thing we come up to is Cerberus. And this is pretty much, it's really the only part I like about this canto, so it's my favorite part. I think this is one of the weaker cantos, to be honest with you. But anyway, Cerberus is pretty cool. So Cerberus, most people know, he's a guardian of the gate of hell in the Greek stories, three-headed dog, real scary. And here Dante just pulls that out from under him and turns him into this gluttonous demon. Let's see here. He is barking and tormenting. Let's see. Okay, so the three-headed dog, at line 16 and 17, he's described his beard greasy and black, his belly large, and then it goes on to describe what he does to his victims, which is at lines 17 and 18. His hands have talons. He claws the spirits, flays them, and quarters them. And unfortunately, unfortunately for Cerberus, they're just shades. Like, he's not getting any sustenance out of this. So he's just really angry the whole time, and he's got these three maws that are just all the time, just, chasing these people around. And Cerberus eventually confronts our poets here, and Virgil's not having it. He's not going to reason with Cerberus at all. He picks up mounds of dirt and just starts stuffing them down his what word does he use? His ravenous pipes. He just fills up Cerberus's mouth with mounds of dirt. So it kind of like chokes him out, and Cerberus just leaves him alone at that point. And then we come to a very strange superstar in this story here. And I think there's forgotten lore here that we don't really know who this guy is. Dante and Virgil are walking across the wasteland here, and they come across this soul who just sits up. And he's like, hey, I know you. Because Dante and Virgil are talking, and he recognizes Dante's accent, and he's like, yeah, I know who you are. You must be from Florence. And Dante's like, well, yes, as a matter of fact, I am. So they get to chatting, and this is going to be Casco, Ciso. I don't know. It's a Italian word that can be translated into something like pig or hog. So a lot of people think that this may not even be a real person. It may be that Dante is trying to say that this is just some guy from the past in Florence. But that doesn't really make sense to me, because he never does anything like that anywhere else. Like, everything means something. So if your explanation is, it was probably just something, then you're wrong. Like, you just haven't found it, and it's probably because they haven't been able to connect who this pig hog guy is to a particular figure, to be a contemporary. Not necessarily a contemporary, he's actually from the generation before Dante. But this character is pretty important. He sits up, and this is where we see, if you remember, Dante begins writing this after his exile in 1302, and he continues to write it up to 1320, but it's set in 1300. So he has the power of foresight. Like, he knows what's going to happen, up into the future to where he's writing. So what he does is he has this character here describe or prophesize Florence 1300 to 1302, where the Black Guelphs will eventually take over power. Let's see here. Touches on the theme of divine justice and moral decay associated with gluttony. It's another one of those examples where we take the people or the individual and compare its troubles to the troubles of a state, its plight. Just like a normal person can, either eat too much or do whatever else is not so good for them, but they just keep taking it in. They are a glutton for punishment, or oftentimes you have sexual gluttons who aren't necessarily lustful, they just can't satisfy themselves. Um, you have that being equated with a state that can't seem to ever satisfy its agenda. You know, that can be a problem if you build a system that is trying to accomplish something and then it accomplishes it, it's just going to keep on going. Or, it just wants more power. Or, there's plenty of governmental problems that can be explained with gluttony when you really get around to it. So Dante continues on with Virgil, of course, and this canto ends when they see a character called Plutus. So that ends canto number 6. All right, canto 7, and this canto picks up right with that encounter with Plutus that was, I guess, hinted at what was coming up at the end of the last canto. They see Plutus, and then we go right into canto 7. Originally, he was a god of wealth, and here Dante has transformed him into a mad demon to symbolize the corruption of wealth and greed. So, the very first line, I'm going to butcher this, but something like Papai, Satan, Pape, Satan, Alepe. No one knows what this means. It's just, there's no sense that can be drawn from it definitively. Pape, P-A-P-E, could mean Pope. Also, that last word, Alepe, P, or whatever, could mean God or first. The word Satan is not used anywhere else in this whole Divine Comedy except for those two parts. If he's going to refer to the great dark evil one or whatever, like he's going to call him Lucifer or even Dis. Satan being here, used only here, might be sort of a call to like the Tower of Babel, where everyone's, the Tower of Babel story, they build the tower and God says, no, we can't have this, I'm going to change everyone's languages. And, there's a lot more to it than that, but that's like how we get to this reference here with Babel, that Satan is like a word that's not used for Lucifer around here, and the rest of it is other words that aren't used around here as well. And that's kind of a hint that this could be a forgotten or lost language because of the Tower of Babel event. And these words are meant to intimidate. So, oh, I'm so sorry. Here is when they invoke Michael's name to do the divine will passage. The same thing happens with Minos, but he doesn't use Michael's name in Canto 5. That's a mistake. It's here. So 2 times in the course of this video, Virgil's going to use his divine will to pass a demon. So this is the time where he uses Michael's name here. So they come down to the 4th circle, which is avarice and greed. Greed and waste. Let's see. Here people roll around giant weights. They roll them around and they bump them into each other, and it's kind of like Sisyphus, where he rolls the rock up and then down the hill, but it's not quite like that. In the Aeneid, at this part of the Bible, it is very much like Sisyphus, but here we just got people kind of like pushing their rocks into each other's rocks. So what that really is supposed to symbolize, I have a hard time kind of grasping it. I guess they're carrying their weight and then bumping into each other with it. And that's on one side, on Dante's and Virgil's right, when they come walking in. And on their left is a bunch of clergy. And Dante's very interested to see the clergy people because, he's interested in the church very much. But they can't recognize them anymore because they're so far out with this greed, this nepotism, that you can't even be recognized anymore. So I don't know if this is just a tool to just kind of skip over this for now, but there's plenty of other parts where he calls out clergy members. So um, maybe this isn't just the spot for it here, where they have the people with the rocks on one side and the sort of silhouetted clergy folk on one side. Dante and Virgil get to talking, and they deal with the idea of fortune. And this is the Roman god Fortuna. Fortuna is the god of fortune, like not necessarily like having a fortune, but having luck. And here Dante kind of breaks down that, and he defines fortune as a divine aspect of God. It's not random, it's not luck, it's distributed as needed. So some people are wealthy and righteous, and some people are poor and righteous, and some people are poor and wicked, and some people are rich and wicked. But if you focus your life on going after fortune, it's typically going to run you wicked. If you have your fortune, or if you need a fortune, God's going to provide you one. So the idea of like chance or luck is sort of broken down here by Virgil. He's like, that's not how it works. There's no such thing as fortune. It's an aspect of God that distributes things that seem lucky to us because there's a plan for that later. So this is the only part, or the only work where Fortuna is described in this way, sort of Christianized. So that's kind of noteworthy there. And as we're walking along, we come across a fountain which dark water flows. This leads them into their descent to the fifth circle, which is for wrathful and sullen. So here we are on the fifth circle, coming down, following this stream that sort of leaks down, and it goes down to the river Styx. Now, this is of course a famous river in the underworld, but here it's not a river; it's more of a swamp or a marshy wasteland. And Virgil and Dante are gonna walk alongside it. So there's this great big, like, for distance, like, it's like a marshland, and they're just kind of walking on the shore as after they have come down to the fifth circle. So they find this marsh and they start walking across it. People fighting each other on top of this marshland. This is the wrathful. They're like pulling each other down into the water, and after they however long, and well, maybe it's just different people or different kinds of people, but you have wrathful on top and sullen on the bottom, where they just kind of like lay down there and you can't even see them. Virgil just assures Dante that they're down there because he's kind of like a tour guide. He's like, yeah, be sure that there's souls even deep down underneath the marsh, and you can see their air bubbles. I don't know why they need air, they're shades, but it's convenient for the story. So there's like, or maybe the air symbolizes something, I don't realize, and the little air bubbles come up, and that's how you know that they're down there. And let's see, how does this next canto bring up? Okay, yeah, and that's pretty much just where it ends. They're walking along, and they're talking about these souls and stuff, and then they see a great tower, and canto over. Okay, so yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I want to acknowledge Mark Vernon for his podcast and YouTube videos that have really opened up a lot of this for me. Durling and Martinez, of course, take all the notes from them. And Grok, the AI system. Again, thanks for watching. If you like, you can add questions down in the comments and I'll address them in later videos. There's also a Discord link if you want to join that, so you can interact with the videos directly with me and other users. Thanks again. Have a great day.